Here's 5 simple steps to build your interview confidence and basically to grow in confidence speaking in front of a camera, to a person face to face, or speaking over the phone. When I went to Warwick University 20 years ago, I had cripplingly low self-confidence. I couldn't really look people in the eye. I was full of fear when I got left at my dorms, which was over in Roots. And I really struggled during my time at university. And something I didn't have a lot of was confidence in interviews. Now, it just so happened that I was lucky. I managed to go to an interview and get a job, but it wasn't a great job. And on reflection, I'm making this video to really help people like me who maybe get the opportunity to do an interview, but they're just terrible when they do interviews. They really lack confidence. So you do all the prep work, you write all the scripts, and then when it actually comes to the time of you doing the interview, you just feel like you just balls it up, or you freeze, or you don't know what to say. Or, you know, I can remember going to an interview once and literally I had sweat just pouring down my face because I was so anxious about what I wanted to say. And even though I knew what to say, I just couldn't get the words out. These 5 steps are for you, and stick around until the end when I'm going to give you 3 extra things that you can do, which is really going to help to grow your confidence, and is definitely going to help you if you're going to an assessment center or having to do stuff face to face. So why is interview confidence so important? Because you need to talk to somebody. As much as people sometimes will want to avoid it, and oftentimes I'll hear people moan about the system, say, well, why do we have to do this? Because ultimately, in most jobs, you have to talk to people, at least on the phone, maybe via email, but you might not do so much stuff face to face, so you need to be able to talk to people. So step number 1 is just talking to yourself. Whether you've got an interview coming up, or maybe if you just want to do a personal introduction, and just speaking out loud to yourself. Now, what a lot of people tend to do is that when they have a script or something like this, they'll kind of sit there and sort of mumble it under their breath. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean speaking to yourself. And a little trick that I use in coaching sessions when I'm dealing with somebody who has really low confidence and they really can't speak up is I'd say, think about somebody that you love, the person that you love the most in the whole world, and just imagine that you're speaking to them. Instantly, you'll just see them relax, you'll see them smile a little bit more, their shoulders drop, and they just find it so much easier to speak to that person rather than just sitting there speaking to themselves and feeling a little bit goofy. Step number 2 is speaking to yourself in front of a mirror. Now, why this is important, and some people might struggle with this, and you don't have to stare directly at yourself in front of the mirror, it's just to get used to your body language and sort of how do you actually look. Are you smiling? Do you look miserable? Do you look bored? A lot of times when I'm doing coaching with somebody, when they're getting ready for an interview, I say, you look really bored, or you look really disinterested. Now, you don't have to feign happiness, it doesn't have to be fake, but you should at least look interested and a little bit more engaged. And generally, people who have a friendlier or more open tonality and way about them are much more likely to go through to the next round. Because take a moment to think about the person that's interviewing you or watching your video or listening to you on the phone. If you're talking to somebody who sounds or looks bored, disinterested, like they can't wait to be somewhere else, are you really going to give them a job? Are you really going to take them through to the next round? Compared to somebody who's maybe their content isn't as good, but they just sound a lot more excited to be there. They sound more motivated and they sound energized. And sometimes when you're thinking about doing all of this prep work, you really need to think about your audience. Just imagine you're sitting on the other side of the table, watching yourself, and think, do I look like I really want this job? Do I look like I'd be a good person to work with? Which brings us on to step number 3, which is very much something like this, which is speaking to yourself in front of a camera and recording it. Now, this really gives you the opportunity to think, can you speak naturally? Because if you're just sitting there reading through a script, can you imagine your response to me if I was just sitting there with my head like this, just reading through a script with no eye contact, just reading one word after another? You're just going to think, who is this guy? He just sounds really boring. He sounds monotonous. So if that's you, if you're watching this thinking, oh, it always sounds so boring and so monotonous, it's because you're trying to recite a script, and that generally doesn't go down very well. Now, an important thing to remember about interview scripts is they're not there to be memorized. They're just there as a general reference point, if you will. There's not something that you need to follow to the letter. If any of you drive and you've ever used a sat nav like Waze, sometimes you're driving with Waze and you think this isn't the fastest way to get from A to B. Now, do you just do what you're doing, or actually think, do you know what, I'm going to trust my own gut and I'm going to take this road because this is my area and I know how to drive around here? And it's exactly the same thing with this, because speaking to yourself and recording yourself, particularly if you're expected to do a video interview, is now starting to get us used to the actual reality of the thing that we're going to do. It's kind of like running by yourself, then doing a park run or running with other people, and then running an actual race. In order for you to start to get used to running in race conditions, you'd want to run with other people so you can get used to the noise, to what other people might be saying or doing, the distractions, what's going on, and then maybe get used to running in front of a crowd of people, running in a busy park. You want to match as closely your preparation to the real thing that you're going to be doing. Which brings us to step number 4, which is watching the recording. So once you've recorded yourself, and it doesn't need to be a super long video, it could be 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You don't need to use a camera like this. You could just use your phone, put it in front of a table. Ideally, it should kind of be at eye height so it looks sort of realistic to what you're going to be doing. So putting it on a bookshelf, and then just watch yourself back. Now, I know that this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and they say, oh, but it's so cringy to watch myself, and why have I got to do it? Because if you're not aware of yourself and your faults, you're never going to be improved. You're just being consciously ignorant. You're just basically burying your head in the sand and ignoring the things that you need to do, which does not serve you. It does not serve the result that you want to achieve. Now, when you watch yourself back, don't sit there and think, oh God, that's wrong, that's wrong. These are the 17 things that I have to change. What you really want to do is just pick out 1 or 2 things. But a lot of times it's just, oh, my eye contact isn't very good. I'm speaking too fast, I'm speaking too slow. I look bored, I could smile more. The general words, as in, oh, I missed that particular thing that I was going to talk about. It's good to be aware of that, but again, you don't need to recite from a script. You should just think, how do I come across? What's the impression that my interview would have if I was sitting there in front of them and they were watching this video? Don't get too caught up in the minutiae. It's not going to be that important, because the answer that you give today is going to be different from the answer that you give tomorrow, because the stressors are going to be different. But thinking about speaking too fast, speaking too slow, how you generally come across on camera, these are the important things. And finally, step number 5, just to make it a bit more realistic, just FaceTime your buddy and ask them to ask you a couple of interview questions. Now, no fluff, nothing in the middle, no feedback while you're doing the interview. Just say, hey, a mum, dad, your brother, sister, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, whoever. Just say, look, here's a couple of questions. Would you mind just picking some out at random and just asking them to me? Because now we're trying to make the practice as realistic as possible. If they can randomize it, even better. Because then you're starting to answer numerous questions, one after the other. Now, the feedback's not that important, particularly if maybe that person doesn't really know their way around interviews. But just always, when you're asking about feedback, just say, what is one thing that you think that I could do better? Or what's one thing you feel that I did that really isn't helping my cause to get another interview? If you're really specific about your question around the feedback, then you'll get quite a specific answer. But asking a very general question will give a general answer. How you did? Oh, I thought you did really well. Yeah, no, I really like this and I really like that. Remember, the purpose of what we're trying to do is, yes, build confidence, but also we're trying to improve on our process. We're trying to get better at a skill. And like any form of skill acquisition, this includes repetition. The most important thing is that we know the skill that we want to develop, we repeat the technique of that skill, and then we get some worthwhile feedback. And of course, if you're really struggling to get good feedback or you're getting very close to your interview, you can always book a coaching call with me down in the link in the description below. Now here's 3 bonus things that you can do which might really push you out of your comfort zone. But over my years of coaching, I've watched these things massively increase people's general confidence, which is really helpful for going to assessment centers, particularly if they're going to be face-to-face. Now, I've kind of rank these in order of what I believe is sort of difficulty or the level of discomfort that's involved. The first one is just online meetup. So this is you just going to meetup.org and going to a random online meetup, just being present, just being around other people, being around strangers, listening to them. Maybe you say something, maybe you don't, and that's okay, but just being around other people. And if you want to level up the difficulty, then go to an offline meetup, go to something in real life, go to a games night, go to a book review, go to a movie night, just something, a meetup where you're doing something that you enjoy, but with people that you don't know. Because what you're basically doing is you're making it less scary to be amongst strangers. Number 2 is something that I used to suggest to students all the time when I was doing a lot of coaching face-to-face between about 2013 to 2018. I worked with a lot of super bright Chinese and East Asian students from China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, so on and so forth. I used to get them to go and volunteer at a charity shop, one afternoon a week. But the reason being is charity shops are pretty laid back, they're pretty friendly. They're generally full of old people who work in them, just like old men, old women, or people with special needs, people with disabilities. Like, it's a very soft working environment. It's a great place to improve your English and also to have no expectations because you're a volunteer at a charity shop. You're not expected to be particularly good at anything. They're just pleased to have you. And this was an experience that a lot of the young women, because 80% of the clients that I work with even now are young women, they absolutely loved it because they found that they could relax, they could express themselves, they could help the customers, they felt genuinely useful, and they also ended up buying a lot of the clothes in the charity shop, if I'm honest with you. And tip number 3, which I think is a really wonderful way to enrich society, make somebody else's life better, and also to really push yourself out of your comfort zone, is befriending a lonely person. Now, Britain, much like many countries around the world, has a growing elderly population. And there are a lot of elderly people who are lonely. They don't have any family, they don't have any friends. And there are volunteer services where you can go and visit an elderly person 1 hour, 2 hours a week. Just go and befriend them. Go and sit and have a cup of tea with them, have a chat with them, listen to things that they have to say. They'll listen to things that you have to say. And it's a really wonderful service, because what a lot of people seem to forget is that if you want to get confidence, you can also do that by giving confidence to other people. You can do it by providing a service for somebody. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like the video, drop me a comment down below, and I'll see you next time. And let me know how these tips work out for you. Bye.